that that are in consideration of all the things that they bring to our schools and our rehearsals each day. So we're essentially developing, as it says in the book, developing the ability to affirm diverse cultural characteristics and perspectives and experiences and use these multiple perceptions and ways of knowing to form new bridges to new ideas and to new concepts for our students, and really bringing them in to the fold and helping them feel collaborative and involved and connected and committed, all the things that we always want our students to be, but just on another level with a bit more depth perhaps than we've ever approached it with before. Another resource that is coming out soon is the following article. So if you're a member of the National Band Association, Dr. Hunter Kopczynski is an actual human resource for me. And by that, I mean, I was actually able to work with him the past 3 years, excuse me, that I've been back at Michigan State. He's been a graduate student. So Hunter has done his master's degree and his DMA here with us at Michigan State. And this article is so compelling, and I will tell you why. I was just able to preview it and talk with him about it, and it really speaks to the idea of us connecting our curriculum to creativity and to community in ways that help us develop our ensemble culture. The idea that we are focusing our repertoire as connective tissue in our program rather than using perhaps extra musical endeavors like trips or awards or social activities to be that connection. So essentially, Hunter or Dr. Kopczynski's main thesis is that cultivating culture should be something that we achieve through building intrinsic motivation within our students, using repertoire, our greatest tool, using the things that we program to actually instruct them on a day-to-day basis. And he also says that if this be the case, we must take care to find repertoire that our students feel immediate and continuous connection to. That music that speaks through its ability to not only instruct students, help them learn and grow, but also allows them the space to reflect upon the musical experience and the repertoire just from an aesthetic and emotional perspective should create a response for them that's memorable and that ties them to the ensemble experience. It's a really great article. If you're an NBA member, just keep an eye out for that, because there's that's a portion of it, and there's even more. And I'll show you a graphic that goes with the article on the next slide here just in a second. Circling back to the very first book, The Culturally Responsive Teaching in Music Education, I was very fortunate that Dr. McCoy was one of my teachers when I was a master's student at UNC Greensboro, and she also came into one of our virtual ensemble classes this spring at Michigan State. And she not only talked about the book, but as a result of the book, she shared this resource by Volk, and then this article within that by Volk and Spector. And this is the thing that probably has helped me change my viewpoint on how to view repertoire the most in the last really 6 to 8 months. So it has done a number of things, but has really helped me clarify how I research things. Again, back to if you're a member of the NBA selective music list is being redone because it's the 60th anniversary, of the organization. So that means not only are new pieces being added, but we're really going through the list and we're really determining the origins of all sorts of folk music and musics that could be troubling to students if they're used in rehearsals, so on, or the audience as they're listening. So what we've done through all of that research is we've created an asterisk system that'll be in the new selective music list that leads people to research and leads people to more information about the minstrelly, for example, which has become troubling as we've gone through the past 16 months, or American folk songs that have backgrounds that are problematic is the term that's typically used. So the frames I'm about to share with you all help the group, as we're working on this research, really determine what pieces should go in what place. Which piece should people do more research on? Which piece should people do a deeper dive on? And these, again, frames that I'll get to in a couple of slides really helped us do that. And it's also helped me from a personal perspective understand how composers, if they quote source material from other cultures, how have they either been authentic about that, or have they used it planted in a piece that's in Western form, so on and so forth. So it just has offered me the opportunity to just really do a much more clear view, clear lens on how composers are implementing things within pieces. And it's also helped me to truly understand origins. I've become really big on origin stories and how I'm going to communicate a given origin story about a piece to the people that are in the rehearsal with me, and how perhaps I can enlighten them, or we can enlighten each other in discussions about where pieces have truly come from, what the meaning of the piece is, so on and so forth. All right, this next slide is from Hunter's article, and I told him I was using this today, and he was very excited that I was going to share with you all and make you aware of this. And as you can see, just to offer an idea, the Venn diagram here gives us the idea of the intersections that we should be bringing together that are centered around the repertoire. Of course, we're going to influence what we play with students and how we present it, how we teach it, but it is going to be a much deeper collaboration, richer collaboration for them and for us. The interactions, I think, will be heightened when we select music that is reflective of the students in our ensemble and their lived experiences. Of course, we're going to worry about the pedagogically appropriate and the socially representative, and the fact that students are learning and growing, but we're going to tie that all back to the idea of the repertoire being the center point of all of that. All right. So with all of that said, I'm going to move forward into categories that I mentioned before. There are 4 categories. And what I've done is for each category, I've gone ahead and explained what it is. And then I'm offering some musical examples so everybody can get an idea of what pieces could fit where. You will see, I will tell you that in the long term, you will see that there are some intersections between categories. And we'll talk about that either as we go through or at the end of the presentation. So diving in again, category 1. So category 1 pieces, and this is again from Volk and Spector, the article that I will share with you at the end of the presentation as well. These are pieces whose only connection to authentic music of another culture is the title. So for example, let me finish that thought, sorry, pause. They don't necessarily contain any musical content from the culture that is referenced. So an example would be the piece called A Basque Lullaby by Dan Forrest. And Dan Forrest is really well known for his slow music, both in choral and in band settings. And this particular piece is just a gorgeous ballad at the grade 2 or 3 level. It was originally one of his choral works, but he transcribed it for band. And it features an original melody that is reminiscent of the music of the Basque culture, but does not feature any actual music from that culture. Another point about this piece, it was written, or 2 points, it was written for his first daughter, excuse me, and then he transcribed it for wind band once again. And he used the original lyrics that accompanied the melody, but those lyrics were taken from an American songbook back in 1917. So just by knowing that A Basque Lullaby was not of the Basque culture, I went a little bit deeper in the research for it, and this framing helped me to find other information that's pretty important to know about the piece. But now I'll just play a little bit of A Basque Lullaby. All right. Another example of a piece from category 1 would be a piece entitled In a French Garden by Richard Meyer. This particular piece, which is a grade 2, is in the style of a Debussy prelude, but it doesn't use any melodic material that's attributable to Debussy or the music of France. So let's play a little bit, and then I will tell you a little bit about how I would approach this piece or a Basque lullaby in terms of how I would research it and then share it with students. So this is In a French Garden by Richard Meyer. So in either case, if I were teaching either of these pieces to a middle school band, I would share the origin story. For example, with the Richard Meyer piece, I would try to track down a Debussy prelude that had some similarities to In a French Garden. And I would ask the kids to either compare and contrast or talk about the similarities or differences, or ask how the prelude may have been inspirational to Richard Meyer, or how Debussy preludes in general may have been inspirational, and talk to the kids, or maybe even talk to my colleague, the art teacher, and go, hey, when do you do Impressionism? Which grade level do you do Impressionism with? Would it be possible for us to collaborate on something co-curricular or cross-curricular that would allow the kids to do work on these ideas in both spaces? And again, just doing a little bit of a deep dive through having the idea of, oh, this is not connected to the authentic music, but what is the origin story, would really help me to put a frame around how I would present it to my students and get the research done to make it really effective for them. All right, category 2. Category 2, we're sometimes taking music from other cultures and we're incorporating them, but it really is still in a standard Western American form, or Western art music form, excuse me. Typically, you will see credit given by the composers regarding where the source material comes from, and it will allow you to go do some research on perhaps the form of that melody, or if there are cultural dances or artistic works that collect to the melody that is in the piece that you're thinking about working on. Another way of looking at it is sometimes these pieces reference melodies and carry titles like theme and variations, as you can see here, Korean folk rhapsody or folk song suite. So other examples other than the ones that I'm going to show you could be some band standards we all know, like English Folk Song Suite by Vaughan Williams, or Lincolnshire Posy by Granger, or other middle school, junior high school pieces such as Asian Folk Rhapsody, which is by Richard Salcedo, or Canadian Folk Fantasy by Anne McGinty. So all of these pieces are quoting or using source material from other cultures or other folk resources, but they are more in westernized form. So the first piece you see here is the Korean Folk Rhapsody by James Curnow, which is standard grade 2, especially in the state where I'm from, which is North Carolina, and here in Michigan as well. And it features the Korean melody Arirang. And in this excerpt, it is used as a developmental tool. It is used to help the composer or help the piece modulate from one key center to another, and also arrive at a grandioso section, which then proceeds to a coda. So it's a ternary form with a coda, and you can hear how Curnow uses the melodic material at different pitch levels and in different ways orchestrationally as he goes from that developmental section through to the grandioso. let me get this going again. Uh-oh. Okay, so sorry, let me reshare. Let me get my slides to behave the way that I want them to. All right. Are you all seeing the large category 2 slide, Dave? Or are you seeing my notes still?
No, nothing.
Nothing. You know,
yeah, it's just right now, it's just the full screen gallery view.
I got you. You take a few months off from using Zoom and this is what happens. I got it.
We all understand.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. What are we seeing now? Have we gone all the way back to the large slide?
No, it's the slide plus the notes on the right.
What? We're gonna do this one more time, y'all. I love it when I'm Southern, y'all. Yeah. So we're doing play from the current slide, but we want to share the actual correct slide, Dr. Golden. How about it? All right. How are we doing now?
Now it's just the slide, large.
Awesome. Wouldn't want to completely bore you all with the inner thoughts that I have going in my head. All right, so this is Korean Folk Rhapsody again. I apologize. Admit openly that that is one of my favorite 7th grade band pieces, probably of all time. So the opportunity to share with the students not only the origins of that melody, but also how the composer has really taken it and really transformed it in many ways as the piece progresses, along with putting in percussion that helps drive the piece and is somewhat reminiscent of the culture, would be some really big discussions that I would have with students if I were still teaching in that setting. Another piece, the Greek folk song suite by Cesarini. This piece actually uses a folk tune from Greek that's very ancient song from the Epirus region. And this particular melody is one that we will recognize from Zorba the Greek that accelerates and then restarts. It's always kind of this move it forward and accelerate, and then it goes back and the dance restarts itself. And the big characteristic of it is the acceleration, which would be something, especially if you utilize something like YouTube or another online resource, you could even show the students how the Greek dances are done and what that looks like, and many different recorded versions of it. So here's just a little bit of Greek folk songs suite, and this is the final movement, the 3rd movement. And then the final piece in this particular category is Albanian Dance by Shelly Hansen, which I'm looking forward to doing with. I teach the third concert group here at Michigan State. I'm looking forward to doing with them when fall gets started on our first concert. And it's a well known tune named the Shota from the Albanian culture. And Hansen, who's also a Michigan State graduate, which I particularly enjoy as well, was trying to recreate the festive mood that happens at a village dance, where a folk band would have been the band to provide the music. So while the piece is Western ternary form, ABA, it uses that original folk melody, and she uses it in 5 different melodic motives to drive the piece through. So this is just a little bit of Albanian dance. All right. Category 3, these pieces make a conscious effort to use the melodic and rhythmic materials from the music of another culture and include traditional percussion instruments or instrument substitutions, and sometimes even specific harmonic structures and timbres from other cultures. So the first piece we have here, Cat Sista by Michael Grady, Iroquois Campfire is the subtitle. Cat Sista means fire in the Iroquois language. So Mr. Grady was inspired by the traditional Iroquois ceremonies involving the things such as the extinguishing of old household fires, the stirring of ashes, and the rekindling of new fires. So the melody, while not itself of the Iroquois nation, it's an original melody by him, uses instruments like the flute to use and echo and imitate the sounds of the Native American flute. And it also has a very quiet, ritualistic beginning and the use of really steady paced percussion throughout to give it a very ceremonial feel. So let's just listen to a little bit of Cat Sista. All right, another example in this category would be a piece by Kevin Day entitled Havana. And in listening to Kevin Day talk about his compositional process, he talks about being a rhythm first composer, which means his compositions typically originate from the rhythmic content within a piece, which then helps to drive and organize the other elements. So in this particular case, Havana is really very much infused with Cuban rhythms and styles, including the cha-cha and the salsa and the mambo. And together they create a musical depiction of the city of Havana. Another thing about Havana, this particular piece, is that he created a flex version of this during the past year. So if you're in a situation where you wanted to play the piece, but you have a differing instrumentation than your norm, or you need something that has smaller scoring, that has some flexibility to it, you could also do this piece with your ensemble. So this is a little bit of Havana by Kevin Day. the last piece for this category is one that has been, I've been a part of many conversations regarding this piece, as well as El Salem, Mexico, the Copeland, just in terms of the idea, is this cultural appropriation? And I think for me, I think everybody comes down on this in real life in a different space. Owen Reed went to Mexico on a Guggenheim Fellowship to study there for 6 months from 1948 to 49. And while he was there is when he was immersed in the culture and immersed in the music of the country and was involved with the people of the country and came to understanding about the culture and the heritage of the country and the music, which for them includes Aztec music, it includes mariachi music, it includes some religious things. If you think about the second movement and their Roman Catholic beliefs, for me, it puts it in a little bit different place because of all the extensive research that he did to come to understanding about the music that he used. And then if you were to pick up a score to La Fiesta, you will see that the program notes, the score notes for the conductor are very extensive, and the research that he did is embedded within them, as well as actually going as far as in the score in particular places. Say, for example, rehearsal marking 22 is where La Negra starts, which is what we're going to listen to in a second from that final movement, which is entitled Carnival. So I think for me, and again, we all come down in different places on this. The amount of research matters. The fact that he was in Mexico and he was involved and worked with people in the culture to come to understanding about the music and its origins makes it a little bit different for me than some other examples of music from other cultures we may see written for band. So let's just listen to a little bit of La Negra, which again is from the last movement of La Fiesta Mexicana. All right, and we have one final category, which is category 4. And these are pieces that are either original compositions by composers from the culture or arrangements that are close approximations of the original music. Typically contain authentic timbres, authentic instruments, and are in forms that are reminiscent of the culture. So for example, we may see, instead of the use of sonata allegro form, we may see the use of call and response forms because it's native to that culture. So one example of this is the Spring Festival by Chen Yi, which was written as a celebration of the Chinese New Year and the traditions that accompany that special Chinese festival. So the melody is actually taken from a Southern Chinese folk ensemble dance called Lion Playing Ball, but the form of the piece is based in the idea of the golden section or golden mean, where musical events throughout the structure that are, or I should say important musical events throughout the structure, are based on the Fibonacci sequence and its repeating nature. So while we have this native dance or this dance that comes from the Chinese folk culture, we have this very westernized form that Chen Yi has embedded this on top of. So this is just a little bit of Spring Festival by Chen Yi. have to say for that particular piece, I was very fortunate to be able to perform this piece in China right after the Chinese New Year with an honor band that was a part of the Asia Pacific Athletic Conference, which is how they govern the athletics and the arts for a lot of the international schools over there. And just to be able to have done the research and then be able to share and talk with the students in the ensemble about the meaning of the lion playing ball, the folk ensemble piece, and the meaning of Chinese New Year and what it means to them and how they celebrate it was just such an eye-opening experience. And a lot of times when you do something like an international ensemble, they will require you to choose a piece that is reflective of their culture. So I feel like I was very fortunate to be able to not only choose this piece, but to interact with those students in ways really that I hadn't interacted with students before, which I think is another thing that's made me very curious and very attached to these categories that help kind of frame or direct my seeking of further information about a piece that I'm considering. Our final piece in category 4 is Alegre by Tania Leon. And Alegre is a Spanish word that means joyful. So you will find that this piece not only has a Latin groove at its basis, but it's very dexterous in its rhythmic content. It moves a lot and it changes lines and it changes instrumentations. And it also shows the link between Latin American culture and music and dance. In addition to all of that, it also has space within the piece for students to take solos and improvise. So it has the chord structure there and it has the repeat signs around it. So it's you determine the end for the improvisatory section of the piece, and then the piece continues on to the end. So just a little bit of Allegre by Tania Leon. Another thing about both of these pieces is that they are from the BandQuest series, which was done by or is guided by still American Composers Forum. And not only are there recordings of these pieces with the score so you can see what's happening on the American Composers BandQuest website, there's also videos of the composer talking about the piece. There are videos of the composers working with the students before the premiere of the piece. And there are also some planned units on that website for how you can get inside the piece and work to form your own unit or use portions of those units to help instruct your students if you're going to be programming the repertoire. So a lot of really rich resources and lots of great teaching materials on that particular website. All right. So again, just to recap a little bit, here's all 4 categories side by side. So just a little recap of the categories I've mentioned. Again, there are overlaps within these categories. So for example, while I, for today's purposes, put La Fiesta in category 3, an argument could be made that it also fits perhaps in category 2. Or Lincolnshire Posy, which I mentioned in category 2, could perhaps also fit in category 3 or category 4 based on how the original folk materials were collected, or based on the fact that Granger was Australian and Australia has a relationship to Britain. All of these categories for me, not only offer frames, but they just give me an entry point that allows me to just do a deeper dive, I feel like, than I may have even done before, which then allows me to be prepared as a teacher to really have conversations with the students about, well, this individual part that you're playing connects to this individual part here, and these two things here create this musical line, which is connected to this, and just really allows me to engage in musical conversations that I feel like are just immediately going to have more depth and offer all of us more understanding and offer all of us more insight to the culture we're studying, what the composer's intent may have perhaps been in creating the piece, and all of those things. So hopefully you'll find these helpful, or some of the other information that I shared within the presentation can be helpful to you as well. Now, a couple of things, I'm going to stop the share, and in the chat here, I am going to share with you, let me stop the show as well. I'm going to share a link to a Google Drive folder, which allows you, if you'd like to go back and reference the PowerPoint slides that don't have the music connected to them, but you can go back and can see all the information, all the things that I discussed through. It also gives the article that was mentioned very early on, the resource from Spector and Volk, that really lays out even more information about the question of authenticity. It offers more pieces as examples for all the different categories. So just offer that up to you all if you'd like to use those or like to reference those. With all of that said, because I've talked a lot and I tend to talk fast, and then I think to myself, I should slow down, and then I get slower, and then I go fast again. It's a gift. Let's see here. Questions. That was going to be my next statement. Would something I think that one's tough. Incheon is tough because it's related to the Vietnam War and some portions of the Vietnam culture, or the Vietnamese culture, excuse me, let me use my words correctly. So that would be, I could see that being perhaps in category 2, though I would place it in category 1 for exactly what you said. So while it references that culture, it probably belongs more in category 1 because it's not as direct, as it uses this exact folk song, it uses Ari Rong, and it uses it in this way. So hopefully that answer makes sense. I think you're right. It would probably be more category 1 than 2. Other questions? I'm here, and it doesn't have to be about the presentation. If you want to know something, you have a burning question about repertoire that you're working through or repertoire that you're considering, I'm glad to share an opinion. That's all it is an opinion, right? And to help out in any way I can. Because we've got what, about 12 minutes here, right?
Correct. Yeah. Dr. Golden, I have a question. You mentioned the NBA list and the asterisks that are going to be used. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, when is that list going to come out, and any other details about it you think might be helpful?
Absolutely. So the final completed list will be available at Midwest. So that's going to coordinate with all the other NBA 60th anniversary activities that are planned. But the start of it should be posted on the NBA website soon. If you're a member, you can keep an eye out for that. There'll be a notification sent. And what you will see, well, as I'm talking, I'll see if I can pull this up really quickly. What we've come up with categories. If I'm remembering correctly, off the top of my head, there are literally 3,000 pieces on the NBA selective list. So what we've tried to do, there's a committee, we're called the NBA IDA committee. What we've tried to do is come up with ways to identify pieces that conductors just need to be aware of the content, is basically where we are, but while not censoring or removing anything. So for example, can you all see that slide? Okay, so here's what we've done. Each member had a grade level to research. We ourselves marked any pieces that made us go, and then we discussed what we found about them. So all of those things you can see here under discussed findings are the things that we discussed between February and mid-June. And then from there, we determined a system for us to indicate pieces, discuss the historical context and all those things. So you can see the very first thing is removed from the list. There's only one piece that fell in that category. And then everything else is we're either going to give you an article about the pieces and why there are issues, or we're going to pin you a resource on the NBA website that lets you go do more research on your own. This here, we're up for discussion on where the idea of cultural appropriation fits in the mix of band repertoire. And then there's some pieces that we found were people don't even have them in their library. So we're trying to track them down and see what's going on. Now, obviously you can see down here, this is on the March list. And then there's only one piece, the Pierre Laplante Overture on a Minstrel Song, which has a problematic song in it called the Boatman Song that we felt like needed to not be listed on the selective list anymore. And then from there, this is, if you are looking at the list when it comes out, this would be the asterisk that you would see. So it's just an advisory. It's like, you should know more about this piece. Like if you're going to teach All the Pretty Horses by Anne McGinty, you need to know the background, we feel like, of the second verse and understand what the deal with that is before you really share that with students. Let me see. Another thing, let me do this. There's two more things in the chat. Let me grab those. All right. That's a great question, Lauren. How do I go about introducing these pieces to students? Do you start with the music itself or background of the piece and its influences? I tend to do both simultaneously. So before we read the piece, I will talk about the title and talk about perhaps where the melody comes from, or maybe you'll recognize this melody, I'll say to them, or this origin of this portion of the piece comes from here, or this composer did this with this music because he or she, they are from this background. So I might start there. And I typically, as we're going through the piece, kind of doing it back and forth. Like we'll play a portion of the piece and we'll talk about where it came from. Or we'll play a portion of the piece and I will share out its relationship to the culture from which the music was taken, so on and so forth. So I try to balance it out so I'm not just talking at them about the music. They're actually performing the music, getting a sense of it, and then getting the information right alongside of it to layer in so they're understanding what they're playing. Let's see. A lot of, I will say this, and this is not why I do the research, but with our students today, we all know here on the screen that 9 times out of 10, they know more about it than we may know. We think we're ready to go, but there's always that one student who's like, hey, Dr. Golden, did you know blah, 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 blah? Yes, actually, I did know blah, 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 blah. Did you know blah, 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 which then turns into a conversation the entire ensemble gets involved with. So I think for us to be able to have conversations with students, especially the older students, the older they get, the more that they are on phones or on computers finding music, sometimes even for us to program. Hey, can we play this? No, I don't know that, but let me look and then we can talk about it, right? We just want to make sure that we can have the most rich, most rewarding conversation with them possible. Amparita Roca is interesting because it's a paso doble. And there's like a little Pierre Laplante march called Monterey March, which is basically a riff on Amparita Roca. So it is my understanding that it is in the style of, but it's also my understanding that Texador has connections to that culture. So that would be something I'd have to do a little bit deeper dive on. because I myself have played it, but I've never programmed it. That would be something for me to do a deeper dive on it to make sure that the things that I know to be true are actually accurate, if that statement makes sense. All right. There's something else, that I was going to tell you all about the NBA process. There is, and some of you all may be aware of this, there is a well-researched, quite large list of pieces on, in the Google Doc that I just posted. And it is entitled Songs with a Questionable Past. So it was a little tough to read. I will not kid you when I first saw some of these things. But this really lays out so many things and lists many, many songs that we know are used in band music, they're used in elementary general music, they're used in orchestral music. And it breaks it down and gives us an idea of what the actual issue for discussion may be. And then I think it informs our approach to how we want to use them with our students. I am not in the game of censorship and just removal because I'm not. But what I will say is you need to be, or I feel like I need to be in the know about what a piece is actually saying. And then there's the other side of it, the idea of like, well, what about Wagner? What about Granger? And I think those decisions are yet another level where you have to decide, what do you think about that? For me personally, on Granger, I haven't found anything in the band repertoire that can replace Granger yet. And I understand full well that Granger was a very interesting character. I will just leave it at that. However, I have not found anything that can replace his music. So what am I going to do? If I'm going to play Granger, I'm going to have the conversation. And that will come up in the next 2 to 3 years because it'll be time for my band to play more Granger. It's not in a rotation, but they should experience it like at some point in their musical careers. They have to experience music like that. So am I going to have that conversation? Yeah, because again, I won't say it is irreplaceable, but I haven't found anything that does the same thing. So Wagner, I still haven't quite placed him yet, because I don't know that that's as clear cut as Granger. But I will say those two things out loud. And all of us we just have to decide. We have to decide where it fits for us as conductor, musician, teachers. And if we're going to play it, can we explain things within one of the frames of reference, one of the categories? Can we explain it through another layer of research? Because our kids deserve to have these conversations. And if we can't figure out how to have the conversation, then we really have to think twice about why that piece versus any of the other X number of band pieces that we have available to us. Other questions? Thoughts? I'm always up to have a good discussion.
I have one more, Dr. Golden. When you were teaching middle school, did you ever find it necessary to, I guess, let the parents know about a piece you were doing before you even started working on it or anything like that? Because I often, I've done pieces where, I've done some program notes or talked about it during the concert. Then after the concert, I go, man, the parents really have no idea what we've been doing the past 8 weeks or whatever, based on my,
Okay. That's a great question. And yes, but not for anything questionable. For example, we had a commission from Pierre LaPlante entitled Freight Train, and that particular piece used a couple different folk songs, but one of them was actually Freight Train. And the particular artist that did that song, her name's Elizabeth Cotton. She's a Smithways. Smithsonian Folkways artist. That's what Smithways means. Okay, great. Who happened to be from Carborough, North Carolina. Well, Carborough, North Carolina is no more than 20 minutes from our school. So when we were doing that process, we very much brought the parents in and helped educate them. It's like, did you know about this artist? Did you know this artist was from here? Did you know this? She's like just very famous, plays guitar, restrung it left-handed, the whole 9 yards. So it was really fun to bring the parents in on that and help them be a part of the process with the kids. They came in, some parents who had the time would come in for rehearsal. They would come in. There's one time we had Mr. LaPlante like call us and talk about the piece. We happened to be in Chicago around Midwest time, and we all went and visited him at the Dan Publications booth. So yeah, we tried to bring everybody on board for that, just so that they could understand the importance and significance of the piece, just as a piece, but also how it was really very tied to our community and our area of the state of North Carolina. So absolutely. And Dave, if everybody, I think doing that now may be more important than ever. So if we find a piece that has the connection, share it with everybody you know, right? Because we want the community to know, we want the community to be involved, we want the community to understand how we as the teachers are trying to tie things to everybody's life experience, everybody's lived experience that they bring to us. So, and sometimes parents know things that you don't know they know. Like there are many examples I could think of, none tied to Freight Train, but some of them who were in band themselves had experiences that they can share with the band or share with even just their individual students that offer connection.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, on behalf of Micah and the executive board, I want to thank Dr. Golden for joining us here this afternoon. And I want to thank all of you for joining us as well, and hope to see you at another session here this afternoon or tomorrow. Some of you might recognize Dr. Golden has been a current or recent judge for our concert festival. So hopefully you'll see her again in the future. So
hey, I responded to the form that you all sent. So
okay, all right, yeah, that was just a quick check to see if you're listening. Yeah, okay.
I also put my email in the chat. So if
Okay.
you all need anything, like I said to Dave when this all started before you all got in here, it's like I taught public school for 18 years, but I have no idea how you all have done what you've done in the last year. So if I can help out in any way and support, just let me know. I'm easy to find. Well, most of the time. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much. Everyone have a great day. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.